Hello again, and we are back on our final video here on marketing with YouTube, where we're going to talk a little bit about YouTube analytics as well as YouTube advertising. So previously, um, we got to this slide here, and I'm just going to explain this a little bit further. But YouTube analytics are some of the, I would say, most useful analytics when it comes to social media and all the different platforms just because the YouTube studio has so many different ways to look at how a video or a channel performs. You can see all the basic stuff that you would expect to see elsewhere: demographic information, likes, comments, shares, subscribes, which would equate to a follow elsewhere. But when it comes to the video itself, one area where it stands above the rest is audience retention. And that is really what this is. So here's one of my videos. You're about 9 minutes and 27 seconds into a 41 and a half minute video. So it's lengthy. And you'll see, I mean, all of my retention charts would look like this. But it was interactive. You could go across, highlight wherever you were, wherever your cursor was located. The line would tell you what that retention rate is. And you could do that all the way to the end. And if you wanted to see what in part of the video they were at, you could use the video player itself to, set a certain time. I didn't have any videos that had like huge drop off rates other than the very beginning, just because they're mostly lecture videos or overviews like this. But what I found was really some interesting things because, the way that this works is you see, I mean, most videos have a pretty steep drop off at the very beginning. As I mentioned before, only less than 6% of viewers make it past 10 seconds. And so for me, again, 42-minute video, that drop off happens in the first, minute. And the way I was kind of looking at this is a great way to tell, first off, like where your video is working and not working. But also, if you have a drop off like this, like I have, where it goes really sharp, that just gives you some overall good information about the general quality of your video, or at least how you're starting. Again, my videos, I am not looking for thousands, millions of views. I'm doing this, I'm really just posting them on YouTube, onto YouTube as an example to show in cases like this. But when we look at a retention chart like this, you can see where it drops quickly and also where it picks up. If you look a little bit further down, about halfway between the 20, 44, and 41 and a half, you'll see a little uptick here. Now, to me, I'm under the impression that that means, hey, people dropped off and then it picked up again, which means either A, people were rewinding, or two, they were jumping ahead a little bit. And you see these drops and increases much more pronounced in other areas of other types of videos where certain things might happen. The classic example is Mr. Beast. He said in an interview one time that his team just looks at the numbers all day, and they had noticed over time that there would be drops when there was a talking head, just like somebody talking to the screen. That these like they call them confessionals, where it's just somebody talking to the screen in between action shots. That was where people were dropping off, and so Mr. Beast has essentially removed those because the analytics were showing drops, and these were data-driven changes that were being made. You can tell all of this through the audience retention chart, which again to me is probably the most important when it comes to understanding how viewers operate. And how they engage with a single video. So let's move along here now to the last section. That is advertising. Advertising on YouTube. Um, you can look at these numbers, pretty significant. Um, YouTube ads reach 31% of the entire population. And again, 2.53 billion is the potential reach because that's how many people are logged in and on YouTube. Now, YouTube advertising to start, I mentioned in my first video that YouTube was bought by Google in 2006. As a result, YouTube ads, they're all self-service and they are run through the Google Ads Manager. If you've ever run paid search campaigns before, then you'll be familiar with YouTube advertising. It's run very much the same, and their ad types, it kind of feels like you're setting up a paid search campaign when you're doing it. Um, the biggest positive, I mean, the Google thing is probably the YouTube's biggest positive because you see a lower cost per click. Oh, well, not lower cost per click. I should say a lower cost per video view, and you're able to reach a much broader network than if you're on some of these other social media platforms. The cons is that they're YouTube ads. People skip them as soon as they can. And a lot of times it is really, really challenging to get conversions. Think about it this way. If you were watching a video, if you wanted to watch a video, an ad comes up, you're not going to let that ad derail your entire experience. Even if you like what you see, which again could be the goal of the ad, you're still not going to click it. You're still just going to wait for it to end and move on to your video. So YouTube advertising inherently has a challenge with this. Now, there are all sorts of ad formats that you can go with. The first one I like to look at is the difference between skippable and non-skippable video ads. The skippable ones, obviously, you can probably imagine. Those are the ones you got to wait 5 seconds before you can click skip ad. Non-skippable ads, the ones that you can't skip, 15 to 20 seconds, a little bit more expensive, but then you have all these different varieties. I won't go through and define every single one, but that is a long line of YouTube ads. One of the bigger pros, as I mentioned earlier, audience targeting, because you have access to Google. There are all sorts of different ways to target on YouTube. At this point, I think most of the targeting options on the different social networks are pretty similar. I would say Meta and YouTube and Google are probably the two strongest because you have the most options. I would also say too, the targeting is scary good. The people that you can reach is incredible. I think 10 years ago, the ability to, the ability to target people through demographic data, that's always been there. That's always been pretty cut and dry. But interests, understanding what people's interests are and targeting them through there, that's the one that's a little bit, that has made breakthroughs over the last decade. I remember in 2014, I was online, or no, I wasn't even online. In 2014, I bought my now wife's engagement ring, and I did very little research online. And then after I bought it, I started seeing a lot of ads. And for me, that was a that was a failure of audience targeting because it had it listed me as somebody, like all the platforms thought I was interested in an engagement ring, when in reality I already had it. And I was not like this exception to the rule or anything. Like, it was just such a scenario where there just wasn't quite the intelligence behind targeting. Today it's very different. Today they have more information on you. They know what different buyer segments are like, and they know what the buying cycle is like. I imagine if I had been going through that today, I would not have seen any of those ads. I probably would have seen like wedding venue ads, wedding photographer ads. It would have been a little bit different. So as a result, with Google and YouTube, I mean, you have the best of the best when it comes to targeting. Campaign goals, these are the objectives, right? You want to get sales, which I would not recommend for a YouTube ad ever. Awareness is most common. Video reach is common. All sorts of different things. YouTube engagements is good because you can try to get subscriptions, cheap subscription out of it. Those are all nice, but again, these are all existing through Google. Finally, uh, bidding. You can just pretty much bid through all different types, right? You can bid through um, cost per view. You can maximize your clicks, your cost per click bidding. You can do ad auction. You might not have any idea what this is if you've never done advertising before, which is all well and good. The one big thing here is your cost per view for YouTube. If you were to go with that, is going to be way cheaper than most other platforms, which is interesting. And again, it's something that is easy to do, simple to set up, but when we look at all of the advertising topics that we've gone through over the last over through YouTube, through Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, this one I would say YouTube is the one that is really not for small businesses. If you're a small business trying to advertise, I would stick with the other ones. And if you're on Google, just go with a classic search, paid search campaign, because YouTube advertising, that's a challenge. It's worth trying once maybe, but I would not dedicate a huge sum of your budget to this. As companies grow and they can afford larger spends, I think it could be worth it. YouTube ads are great with something like movie previews that really capture the attention of people. Maybe some podcasts, but overall, YouTube advertising not for the faint of heart. And unlike the organic options we talked about with YouTube, advertising is not something I would recommend. But in summary, I like to think of YouTube through this quote from Seth Godin. Marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, but the stories you tell. It's about an experience. A platform like YouTube is a great way to do that. It's a great way to tell the stories, not only of your brand, but of the people that make up that brand. So with that, marketing with YouTube has concluded. I would recommend jumping over to the next section, which is marketing with TikTok. I don't have those videos done yet. Otherwise, I have a card or an end screen like I preached earlier. But for now, feel free to move along to the next playlist. And with any questions, feel free to reach out. And if you liked this format of lecturing, please be sure to say something to me. Thanks.